I'm going to be going over political parties in the USA for A2 level government and politics, AQA specification 3A. I don't have any notes with me or anything, this is just off the top of my head, so that's why I'll probably stumble and pause, but basically I'll be talking about political parties. The topic is political parties, and in particular the two-party system, whether or not the USA has a two-party system. So basically, a two-party system can be defined as a party system in which two major parties regularly win the vast majority of popular vote in general elections, regularly win nearly all the seats in the legislature, and they alternate control of the executive branch. So if going by these characteristics, or these criteria rather, then the USA would constitute as a two-party system. There's evidence to suggest that the USA is a two-party system. For example, in the 12 elections from 1968 to 2012, the Democratic and Republican parties have never won less than 80% of the vote. In 8 of these 12, they've never won less than 95% of the vote. Currently, there are only 2 independent senators in the Senate. That's Bernie Sanders of Vermont and Angus King of Maine. But those 2, they have a Democratic leaning and they both caucus with the Democrats. The two-party system goes beyond the federal level. There's only one independent governor out of 50, that's Bill Walker of Alaska. There are alternative theories to the party system of the USA today. There's one theory that suggests that the USA actually has a one-party system, and both parties are identical, only separated by the issue of abortion. That's not literal, but it's a quote from a political commentator. So that's the one-party hypothesis, and that's the view of them being 2 bottles half empty, just with different labels on, and all the politicians are the same basically in Washington and stuff, and they all want the same thing. But today, given the polarized nature of American politics, this view is it's inaccurate and probably outdated. If you were going to use it, you'd probably use it for the 1960s or 1970s, where the very conservative candidate George Wallace got defeated, or Barry Goldwater, he got defeated, or the very liberal candidate in 1972, George McGovern, he got defeated. So you can argue that they got defeated because parties played on the middle ground, but today that's not accurate. There's massive polarization. You know the Republicans from the Democrats, their policies are completely different. So that one-party theory would be ruled out. You then have the 50-party or 100-party theory, and this basically means that because the USA is such a big country, there's one Democratic Party and one Republican Party in each of the 50 states. So evidence for this is looking at the Republican Party in Georgia, which is very conservative. Any Republican Party in the South, basically, in Texas, in Louisiana, anywhere, it's very, very conservative. Gun rights, anti-gay, pro-life. And then you look at the Republican Party in New York or Maine, where you have like Senator Suzanne Collins, who came out in support of gay rights. That would not happen with Governor Rick Perry in Texas, or the Democratic Party party. Similarly, in Georgia again, or Vermont, you have Senator Bernie Sanders advocating for a move to socialist policies, arguably, and you have former House Representative John Barrow, who was all about gun rights and who was endorsed by the NRA, which are core conservative values. So the 50-party system is a more reasonable, very interpretation of the USA, but generally political analysts and commentators agree that it is a two-party state currently, with obviously the Democrats and the Republicans. You can talk about how third parties don't have an influence. There's obviously Ralph Nader in the 2000 election, and Ross Perot in 1992 and 96, and George Wallace in 1968. But in 2012, third parties, the total vote for third parties was less than 2%, so they don't really have any input in the real politics of America, arguably. The electoral system favours a two-party system, which is for first past the post, and the electoral college as well. If you win majority of the votes in a state, you win all the electoral college votes. You can talk about the broad church nature of the parties, and how, even though they're becoming more ideologically distinct, they still sort of represent a bit of everything. They're still seen as Big Ten parties, which cover basically all the routes, all the possible areas that people would want, and this links into the natural duopoly of most governments, because there's usually two sides to every story. So conservative, liberal, right, left, pro-choice, pro-life, and the Republican Party and the Democratic Party do that. They fulfill those functions, so you don't really need any other parties to get into the mix. We can talk about the rise in single issue pressure groups. They allow for environmental causes, for gun control or gun rights to be targeted directly, instead of creating a whole new party to deal with all these different aspects, when you can just get a single issue group to get what you want done. So those are on the rise, meaning we still just have the same two parties. So basically, America still is a two-party system. Other theories are a one-party system, which can be ruled out, and the 50-party, 100-party system, which makes sense. But today, there's a strong argument for a two-party system. One political, not even a political analyst, someone said at the tail end of the 2012 elections that actually America is a two-party system, but with no party control, in that the two-party system is characterized by two alternate control of the executive and legislature. But with the USA, you can have one party controlling the executive, and it can be in the Republic, and a different party controlling the legislature. So if you look at it that way, it is a two-party system, but with no party control. It's rare that one party will control the executive and legislature, but it is still a two-party system.